Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that there is Andy Nelson.
Hey, hey, hey.
And we spoil movies. In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day, long before we had a website, or listeners, or taste, or class. We called ourselves Movies We Like, which was, with the benefit of hindsight, A terrible name.
But before we send you through the window of time to gaze your earballs on movie podcast history, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you decide to become a regular listener of this show and you're interested in supporting our ongoing work on our other series like The Film Board or The Speakeasy and Trailer Rewind, please consider a regular donation to us through our Patreon page at patreon.com/thenextreel.
All the contributors are invited to join us in our Slack channel, where we have tons of fun, and they are entered to win our regular contests, guest spots on this very show, all sorts of good stuff.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention. We hope you enjoy the show. We haven't really actually talked about our weeks. You have a good week?
It was a very busy week. It went by very
You're busy
quickly.
making movies?
No, I'm busy making some commercials and trying to give some good tips to young scrapping screenwriters.
You're a good man to do that. It's like charity work.
It feels like charity work, the amount of money I get.
I'm getting a little blowing in your microphone.
Yeah, hold on.
Move it a smidge.
I bumped it. Okay, how's that?
Oh, now that's you. That's you. Sound like a dragon. A dragon.
How's that?
That's better. All right,
okay, I moved it farther away, so I might have to speak up. But.
No, you're good. You sound great.
Yeah.
So this is. I have to imagine. I can only imagine because I know how I feel that there are probably people who are ready for us to be done with this series.
Well, if that's the case, they're really going to enjoy this one.
Legend says that a crystal skull was stolen from a mythical lost city in the Amazon, supposedly built out of solid gold, guarded by the living dead. Whoever returns the skull to the city temple will be given control over its power.
All right, so we've been the last 3 weeks. We've been doing the Indiana Jones series. This is the fourth and final episode dedicated to Indy.
Let's cross our fingers that it's the last episode we have to do for this series.
I don't know. All right. I don't even know where to start. I feel like we need a big reveal. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Let's talk about the movie.
Okay. Well, it's 19 years later than when they last made an Indiana Jones movie, because the last one was 89 and then this one was 2008.
Right.
I will say something that I did like when I read is that Harrison Ford refused to dye his hair for this. You like that? You think it's you think that's good? Like authenticity? Yeah, I just think that, it's acknowledging the realities that he's an older man now, It's acknowledging the fact that, heroes get old too. And so, I liked that in the story, the fact that they kind of play up his age. I don't think it necessarily worked as well as I would have liked it to, but...
why? Well, okay, we got to keep talking about the movie. So the cinematographer. Tell me what you think about the cinematography of this movie.
Well, that's interesting because Douglas Slocum, who was the DP on the other ones, he is really old now. I think he's like 98 or something. And he retired, actually. Last Crusade was his last film that he DP'd. And so Crystal Skull was the first movie he did out of retirement. No, he didn't do it.
Oh.
No, he's 98 years old.
I thought that was what you were trying to tell me, was that this elderly 98-year-old came back to DP this movie, and I was going to be very surprised. I did not know that. That
would have been great.
That would have maybe been a different story.
Well, ever since, I don't know when Spielberg started using I'm probably going to butcher his name, but Janusz Kaminski as his DP. Probably in the, he was doing it with like, Jurassic Park? I can't remember. But anyway, he's been using him for a long time as his cinematographer. And, he even said that both he and Janusz Kaminski, when they looked back on the cinematography style that they used in these movies, they both felt like they had to kind of step backward in their learning curve across life and to try to jump back into an older mindset of how to shoot a movie, which I don't think either of them liked doing, So I guess it was a challenge to go back and do that for this film, And I will say, I mean, this film, the cinematography looked spot on with how the other ones looked. It had that very glossy Hollywood style.
They did, even, it was almost even under a magnifying glass, right? I mean, it was, I almost got as I'm watching it, I've got this feeling like everything's just a little hot. Everything's tuned just a little hot. It's glossy, but hot. Like it's even just a little bit overexposed. It's just a hair. Everything looks a little bit frayed.
Well, I think what I always think of is it looks like a set. It looks like you don't have like just completely natural darks. There's not a real shadow. There's no shadowy, like real shadowy areas. It all just feels artificial.
Well, especially there's the scene where they pull back where Indiana and Mutt are, they've just gone to the temple and they're about to fight the skull monkey people.
Yeah, right.
And the establishing shot for that scene is practically a tilt shift, right? It looks so miniature.
Yeah.
That you really, I mean, it is as obvious a model as I think I've ever seen in one of these movies. I think it may be the most obvious model that I've seen in the movie. I find it ironic that it comes in the fourth most recent sort of modern film. Yeah. Like they're trying. I mean, okay, come on.
Yeah.
Spielberg, you couldn't, did you want to make it look like a model like this?
Well, they
probably
did. Yeah, well, they probably did. They even went back to using a lot of the matte paintings, that I think kind of fell out of style when CG took off, and because it's so easy to just paint your entire landscape in a computer now. No one actually does it manually, and so I think by going back and doing that, it lent to that look. I don't know. I guess it doesn't sound like for either of us it worked that well.
Well, I don't know, and I'm a little nervous to talk about kind of how I feel about the movie with you. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a little nervous about that. I feel like there's gonna be a big reveal here, and you're not gonna like me very much.
Wow, I'm curious to see where this is gonna go.
All right.
I need a beer or something to handle this.
I'm surprised. Yeah. Why are you drinking something so clear?
Well, I wish it was just a big glass of gin that I could probably handle it then.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
I didn't hate this movie as much as I thought I would.
Wow. I knew you were about to say that.
I didn't hate it as much. I remember being really resentful when I saw this in the theater. I resented that this movie was made. I was just peeved.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching it tonight, and I'm taking notes. And I found myself, I would just stop taking notes. And I realized that, I'll be damned, I'm actually watching this movie. I thought I was going to, I wasn't keen on the open. So let's talk about the open, right? The open is kind of the big thing. The open, in fact, is what we could likely say added a new bit of vernacular to the cinema culture, to the entertainment culture.
Yes.
Right?
Definitely.
Nuke the fridge.
Yeah.
So
spinning it off straight off of Jumping the Shark. And Spielberg has said that he's proud of that. He's proud of this movie. He liked this movie. He's proud of the movie, and he's particularly proud that he brought Nuke the Fridge into our cultural vernacular. Congratulations, Mr. Spielberg. Well, and at least he admits that, it was his silly idea.
Yeah.
So
no,
at least he
owns it.
admits it was silly. He owns up to it. But the interesting thing also is George Lucas is the one who like right from the start, he always wanted to have aliens in this one. Like that was his big thing. And Spielberg was like always against having aliens. And I don't think that, they completely resolved it, but somehow George managed to pull the wool over Steven's eyes by saying, "Oh, they're not aliens; they're interdimensional beings." And I guess then all of a sudden it was okay.
I don't know if that makes it okay for me.
No,
I didn't. I honestly, I felt like that was we were kind of jumping around, but I felt like that. I felt like what was missing there is that they just didn't commit. I think if there are shortcomings in this film, it's that there are pieces of character and there are pieces of plot and story that were non-committal. And anywhere they were non-committal, anywhere it felt like there was not a decisive choice, a decisive and obvious choice, because the whole series is about decisive and obvious choices, dramatic cartoon choices. And in this movie, anywhere there's an obvious decisive choice that is not played out fully, then it's a shortcoming to the film. And the alien thing is a big one, it seems to me, because I could almost handle aliens, and it feels like the effects, the way they were going with the CG effects and the crystal alien coming, as they kind of meld into one another at the end, as they do the roulette effect.
The crystal alien roulette.
The crystal alien roulette.
Is that a new game in Vegas?
Yeah, right. And it felt like that was, I get it, but they're still talking. But then John Hurt's character says, they went into the space between the space.
Yeah.
What the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
So I felt like that was
and how does he even know?
Yeah. Well, because he was, it's because he was, he was psychically tied to the aliens.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
He was nutso. He went nutso tied to the brain for a while.
Right.
Tied to the brain, which made him quote Byron. I'm not sure I understood why that happened. I guess that was just the language that was in his head, as a teacher, as a professor.
It was Spielberg trying to create a little Apocalypse Now moment.
You think this was his big homage?
It kind of felt like, the crazy man in the jungle, spouting poetry. I don't know. That just popped into my head. I actually had never thought of that until this moment. So I could just be completely full of it, but it very well could be. They were all buddies back in the 70s,
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that either, but it does start to make kind of a weird sort of sense. We were talking about something else though, and then I don't know. I'm sure you distracted me.
I probably did.
You did.
I'm good at that. Well, I'll tell you something about the film. Because I've thought about it a little bit since I rewatched it. It's only the second time I've seen it.
That I think is a really, those other three movies, I'll bet, between us, we've seen those three movies, over 100 times easy.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I still think to this day, Raiders is the film that I've seen more than any other film.
Yeah.
So there you go. Then this one I've seen twice, and I had a really hard time getting through it the second time. I didn't have a hard time getting through it, like I was stopping it because it was just so horrifying, but I was mocking it quite a bit as I watched it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The aliens aren't what bother me with it. Like, I actually think the concept is a pretty interesting one, and it kind of fits in with that serial adventure thing. You've got, in every story, there's some big, mythical, experience going on, whether it's something that's biblical, which we have in 2 films, something that's, kind of a spiritual thing from another culture, or then we have this alien story going on in this last one. But I think for me, it felt like from the beginning, there wasn't enough grounding us in any sort of reality that felt believable. And I think if I could have believed in the film a little more, I would have bought into all of it and really enjoyed the alien story. Because I think making a story about these aliens that, everybody knows about these strange, paintings or whatever they are on the ground that you can only see from the sky. There's a lot of really interesting, things like that, people kind of attribute to maybe it's an alien life force that left those here. I think it's really interesting. There's just so many things going on in the film that distract me from that.
All right. I'm trying to get a sense of where they could have pulled that together better. I have a challenge with it because really I felt like I was looking for that hole, right? I was looking for that hole where I was going to feel like I was disconnected. And I know this is going to just bug the hell out of you, but I thought this movie did a better job of creating that sort of universe for me than Temple of Doom did in a pretty significant way. Like from the very open, when you have the kids racing the army, right? Mm-hmm. Racing the truck.
Yep.
That was such an American Graffiti moment for me. It just felt like just sort of fun and frivolous and reckless. And I thought they just executed it very, very well. And so I'm watching that opening scene, and then they get to the hat. They do the classic silhouette when they pull Indy out and they kick him around a little bit, but you don't see his face until he bends down and you see the silhouette against the car as he puts the hat on. And it was like the punchline to a really, I thought, an interesting open to the story. Mm-hmm. Then they punt for about 20 minutes, and yeah. And I don't know, everything else was, it was just haphazard kind of effects and fights and the rocket and all that stuff and the nuke. And I get that. But it felt like they got me in well early. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel lost I didn't feel like they were.
No, I agree with you. I think that all of that worked really well. I thought that the reveal that the soldiers were actually Russians was kind of a nice little surprise. Like I didn't see that coming.
That was another great sort of showman move. Mm-hmm. There's this really, what do they call that? You're the movie guy, right? So they've got the what's his name? The main evil colonel. Mm-hmm. The actor was we had him in the notes.
Yeah, I can't remember his name.
Was it, please, this is going to make me crazy. It was the guy, Pat Roach?
No, it wasn't Pat Roach.
It was not Pat Roach.
Because Pat Roach died.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway.
But yeah, they wrote that role in, for Pat Roach, who had died, but yeah.
Well, he, so he's standing there and they've got the close up. Right. Mm-hmm. The close up on his face. And we all think that he's the American colonel. And they pull back and you see that there are like 5 dudes behind him. Mm-hmm. Right. And they have guns and they all twirl around. Yeah. Now, if we were standing there, right, if we were soldiers standing at that gate post, mm-hmm. We would obviously have seen that there was a train of armed gunmen ready to shoot us standing behind him. Yeah. But because of the framing of the film, what is that called? That's a device, right? It's a specific filmmaking device. Where they're hiding a piece of reality and revealing it when the time is right, but
it's because the audience, because we can't see it because it's not in the frame.
It doesn't exist. Well, that's what we're supposed to believe. Like it doesn't exist until they want it to exist for us.
Exactly. I'm not sure what the name of that is, but that's exactly what it is, right? Oh, it's not in the frame. It's not really there. Right. I mean, they do that in horror films all the time. Right. It's the sort of thing that creates that jump moment.
It is the jump moment. And here's another place where I think there's a matter of sort of non-committal filmmaking, right? Spielberg has established that this is something he does. It's his thing, right? He did it in Jaws. He did it he did it a lot in Jaws. Did it all over Close Encounters. It's just his thing. It's a thing he does. Jurassic Park, please. He does it all over Jurassic Park.
Mm-hmm.
And yet then they get to the place where they fight the Munchkin monkey skull people, right?
Yeah.
In the temple.
Right.
And, I don't know what there's a sequence of about, I guess 40 seconds where they're trying to establish that there's something spooky going on. And it was absolutely the not spookiest kind of reveal I think he's done, right? I mean, you see these monkey people, it's practically vaudeville. It's like a Marx Brothers kind of a thing. The monkey people jumping around and Mutt and Indy are supposed to have not seen them.
You're talking not about the temple, you're talking about the cemetery, right?
Cemetery.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's, they went down and it looked
it looks all old and it's a strange cemetery. I've never had to climb down a ladder into lower catacombs I think you're right. And I don't know if that fell into them trying to get back to that old cinematography style. Or their old storytelling style or what it was, but it did feel that way quite a bit. It felt like they were pulling out those old tricks like, if they, they didn't notice it, then it isn't really there. And it felt, it didn't feel like they were, making all the best decisions, like they had fully thought through everything like they should have. Right.
Like maybe, it almost felt like too many people were involved making this movie. That's kind of what it felt, kind of clumsy in some places.
This is something I feel frequently when I see a sequel made after a very long period of time. It just feels like they're trying to get back some charm from the other ones or something. And it just always ends up coming a long period of time happened. But I can't think of any off the top of my head that actually were good when there was a long period of time after.
Hey,
Godfather 3 had some weakness. Well, I was thinking about, if there are any sequels out there that took a long period of time between one film and then, one of the sequels, where I felt that the sequel actually worked or was at the same level as the previous film. And I can't think of any. Godfather 3 was made after, probably pretty close to this. It was probably about 18 years or 16 years from Godfather 2. That one, I think, it was a great part of the story, but I still feel it's always the weakest one.
Really?
Godfather 3?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's got some amazing stuff, don't get me wrong. But I think when you compare it to the first two, it's just not on par with them.
Well, that'll have to be on the list.
Yeah, I guess so.
All right.
Tron, like the sequel to Tron. Granted, I don't think the first one is that great to begin with, but after 25 years, I felt like they could have at least come up with a better story.
Yeah, that was a tough one to watch.
Yeah,
it was fun. If you turn that,
eye candy.
It was eye candy. It was actually, I take it back. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah.
It was actually more fun to watch than the first one. The first one was not all that much fun to watch. It was, but 25 years ago. It's not anymore. It's a snoozer.
It is. You're right. Yeah. But,
All right.
Anytime people take a long period of time, it just seems like, a lot of cooks get into the kitchen and they're all trying to figure out how to recapture that old magic.
Right. Because everybody, because there are so many, that I think is why I was so peeved at this movie. Right. I think I felt, I probably represent, some of the sentiments of the filmmakers was, we have to try to capture what we remember this movie being. We remember this character being. And, rather than sort of let the story kind of shine with what it is now. And with the exception of Harrison Ford not dyeing his hair, that may be, the only testament to that sentiment.
Yeah.
The rest was just a sort of a struggle to find the original magic. That does not, I think, detract from the fact that I still enjoyed getting through this movie. I thought it was better paced than this. Than the second one. I don't know. I think I would put it sort of on par. The action sequences I thought were interesting. I had some real trouble with the chase through the jungle. I don't know.
Yeah.
I didn't actually read your notes on the chase through the jungle. What did you think of that one?
I don't think very highly of the chase through the jungle.
Yeah. Well, let's okay. So let's talk about the chase, and then we got to talk about animals in this movie.
Well, I mean, the chase through the jungle. I mean, first of all, it starts off with them conveniently, or they're driving some crazy tank that's got like all these grinders on the front of it that are like ripping the forest down so they can create a road.
Right.
Essentially, without, which maybe I'm just putting too much thought into it, but it's,
I guarantee you are. I guarantee.
But I have a really hard time buying that the forest floor is perfectly flat and level for them. So as they tear it down, there's a nice flat place that they can drive on. So that's just me thinking too much.
Well, no, I think what was probably happening is that the front end was grinding all the trees, and what we didn't see was that the back end was actually laying pavement or some sort of rail system.
Right, exactly.
That's what you don't see.
That's what I'm not seeing, right? Well, and I think at some point it starts laying somehow two rail systems because, they end up having a Jeep chase through the forest, and conveniently it ends up, where there's two nice stretches of path for them to be driving along. And it works out really well. It's like, why did they even need that thing? They just were on the wrong paths. There were clearly already roads out there.
Yeah, no.
In the Amazon jungle.
Well, because, the Nazis were there at some point, I'm sure, and laid road.
Yeah, right. I forgot. Boys from Brazil were all down there.
They were all down there, too. So, you see, I think there's just a lot of... you're just not giving credit to the early pioneers.
Yeah.
The early modernizers of Amazon.
I'm not.
It's unfortunate. So go ahead.
Well, yeah. So I was just going to say, they're driving through the jungle. It's the whole, battle back and forth from one vehicle to the other as they're trying to get the crystal skull back from each other. And then all of a sudden a sword fight starts happening on tops of the vehicles as we're going along.
Yeah. Why does she carry a sword?
That
may be me overthinking it, maybe.
I don't think so.
I didn't get it. I didn't get that at all. I had trouble with that. I was fixating on it. Mm-hmm. Why does she, even from the very beginning when she's threatening Indy,
right. She pulls it out.
She brandishes it.
Yeah.
Why does she even have a sword? I don't get it. That's like dress uniform stuff, and she's not wearing dress uniform. Not
right.
by a long shot. All right, so go ahead. The sword fight breaks out. Not only does a sword fight break out because she has a sword, but Mutt happens to be quite an adept swordsman.
Yeah, conveniently we learn early on that he's, had to take fencing. So that was a great setup for that. And actually, remind me where the second sword came from. Was that from another Russian soldier? Like, do they all run around with swords?
Or maybe it was just her extra sword.
Maybe it was her.
She has dualies.
Hey, that could be it.
I'm gonna look for it. I got the movie playing right here. I'm gonna see if I can find it.
But yes, so we go from the sword fight to all of a sudden, Mutt gets caught up in a vine and ends up in the trees.
But it's a vine, like a slinky vine.
Right. Like it pulls him all the way up to the top.
Like 60 feet.
Yeah, right. And he kind of watches them driving away.
Yeah.
And then all of the little monkeys of the forest. Oh, this is just the best.
I had trouble with this.
They all come out and they show, it's almost like they, speaking of this movie, being all about, psychics and how Stalin had this, fascination with psychically fighting wars. I think there was some psychic connection between Mutt and the monkeys. I think that's what it was. I think the monkeys, communicated with him psychically and taught him. It was almost like a Matrix moment where he looked into the eyes of the monkeys and he just knew how to play Tarzan.
That's right. It was the Zen stare. Yeah, he nailed it. The Spider-Man Tarzan swinging through the trees thing. That was incredible. But I just kept thinking, what are these monkeys so pissed about? Why? When he goes and he gets to the monkey, he drops the monkeys on the
bad guys' truck.
And they go to town on the bad guys, just pulling hair and picking nose. And it was just, they went crazy. And I could not for the life of me figure out why the monkeys got so mad. They were up in their tree. They were fine.
It's because they don't like communists.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. All of the animals in the film are very, good Democrats and Republicans. They're all anti-commie.
Fascinating. That's fascinating.
That was a program. While Stalin was focusing on psychics, McCarthy was actually out there psychically connecting to animals and teaching them to be anti-red.
Anti-red.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad you pulled that one out.
Yeah.
So it's real trouble. Go ahead.
Well, so then let's continue with this wonderful chase scene.
Yeah.
So we get to so they crash their vehicle or something, and they conveniently crash it into like a I don't know, some crazy monster ant mound.
The fire ants.
They're probably like bullet ants or something because they're pretty big and
bullet
they
ants,
kill you.
That's a thing. Bullet ants is
that is a thing. Yeah.
All right. But they are big and they're so fast.
Yeah, they're a little ridiculously fast and they devour you very quickly.
So you don't buy it. You don't buy that they could eat that person that fast.
I don't know if I buy it or not. What I don't buy is I actually think the ants. It's kind of a it's fun bit of reality. I mean, there are all these ants out there. I think they took it to an extreme. But the thing I don't like is when the ants all of a sudden create this little ant pile or whatever it is they do, like climbing on each other's backs so that they can get up to Irina, who's like hanging from a vine. Pulled herself off the ground, and the ants make a little ant pile to climb up to her, and so one of them can get on her, and then that one gets squished. But I thought that was taking it a little far.
Well, that way it gets squished and pops and it's like just full of jelly, and it's not
and it breaks the fourth wall because the ant goo splatters all over the lens.
Well, that happens a couple of times too when the trucks are driving through the ants later.
More ant squish.
Ant squish gets on the lens again, and that's why would you do that as a filmmaker? I mean, why would you intentionally break the fourth wall in a movie at this point when that's not a thing that you've done before? That's not an established conceit.
Yeah, I don't know why he would have done that in this film. I think that there's kind of become a trend in horror movies in the last decade or so, where when people or when something bloody or gory happens, it splatters the lens because it makes it just seem that much grosser, that it got that close to us, I guess. And I don't know if that's why he did it, because, maybe naturally people are just afraid of, human eating ants, and then getting it squished all over the lens makes you cringe. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but you're right. It really is really breaking a pattern that had been established with these films. He had never done that before. So why start now? I don't know. It didn't work for me.
It didn't. I don't think that worked. But on the other hand, I thought the ants themselves were a particularly fine and threatening adventure. Like, once you kind of get over the fact that there's ant goo on the screen, if you've already bought into the fact, let's say if you've recovered from the monkeys, then the ants, the ants actually are not so bad. Well, I take it back actually, because I'm out of order. The ants actually happen. No, that's right.
No, you're right. Monkeys first.
Right. Monkeys first, and then the ants. And by the way, I just saw the sword. It was in fact a spare sword kind of a situation, because Mutt looks down and there's a beautifully ornate box, and he opens the box and not one, not two, but three spare swords are in a velvet pillow.
How convenient for him. In a velvet pillow, nonetheless.
It was quite lovely. Quite lovely. So, all right. So,
he could almost have pulled out the singing sword from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and I wouldn't have been more surprised.
That's not nice.
Come on.
As long as we're talking about terrible use of animals, we have to talk about the snake. I am surprised that rope snake is not part of the cultural gestalt as nuke the fridge has become. Are we serious about the rat snake?
I'll tell you, that I think is the only thing that is over the top that I actually really enjoy in this film.
Oh my God.
I know. And I don't know why, but I laugh every time. And I think it's just because his reaction to snakes, which we've seen, we didn't see it in the second film. We did see it in the third, right? Gosh, I can't remember if snakes.
No, it's the snakes because it's
only in the first one, maybe.
Well, in the first one, because in the second one, what is it in the second one? In the third one, it's.
Well, the second one there's all the bugs.
Right, and the third one is
one
rats. And this one, I don't know, what is the corollary to this one?
Well, there's a lot. Monkeys, ants, birds,
ants.
Amphibians.
Yeah, but back to snakes. But nothing else gives him quite the thrill that snakes do. Right. So it's a rat snake that is apparently... okay, so I went back. I did not do this kind of research for the rat snake, and I regret that. I actually went and I did some research on the nuke the fridge thing, because I'm thinking, could that happen? Is there an ounce of truth in that? And it turns out that if the conditions are exactly right, you could in fact lock yourself in a fridge, and if you weren't bounced into a bloody pulp, there is a distance at which, if you are a certain distance from the center of the blast, you actually would not be incinerated, but would be tossed by the shockwave. You wouldn't be burned, but you'd be hit by the shockwave and you'd be bounced away. And so there's a very narrow window of life in there, but it could happen. Now, rat snake. I did not do any research on just how much weight a rat snake, a fully grown rat snake, could sustain if a grown man happened to use it as a rope or a noose or any sort of a climbing apparatus.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a real hard time not imagining that thing doesn't just get ripped apart. Why did not get just ripped apart?
Oh, yeah. It probably should have. This says adult rat snakes are typically 3 to 5 feet. That one seemed a lot longer than 5 feet.
Yeah, like double.
Yeah.
Double. 10 feet. I think 10 feet.
Yeah, probably. It seemed like an anaconda length snake.
Yeah. A python, the kind that eat deer. That's what it was. And so I had a real hard time with that. But you did not. That's the stupidest part of the movie, and you actually, that's one you liked. That shows your disdain for this movie.
I don't know why. It's just his reaction to it. It's like he'd almost rather die drowning in this sand pit than hold on to a snake and get pulled out. I don't know why. It just always makes me laugh when I see his reaction to that.
Man, that's a problem.
Well, what are you going to do? I liked the second one.
Man, that's funny.
Yes.
Holy smokes. All right. So, So what else? We got to talk. Go ahead.
So we're talking about this fight. So we have to go on and continue the fight because it's not done yet. Because the next thing that happens after they manage to escape the ants, using the power of the crystal skull to drive them back, they hop in the Jeep and what do they do? Marion drives off a cliff.
Yeah.
Like a giddy schoolgirl. I maybe she had previously scoped out what was over the edge of that cliff, because she sure acted like she knew what was going on.
Quite confident. That's true.
She's just like,
no. She did. No, she actually did scope it out. I can't believe it. We're so angry. But you know what? She did. She drove here's the thing. She had all of them except for John Hurt, who was laying down, and Indy, right? So she's driving the truck and she drives all the way up to the edge of the cliff.
Right.
And in the meantime, the big Russian guy is beating the crap out of Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And John Hurt is holding off all the ants with his magical crystal skull.
Right, laying on the ground.
Many Russians are being eaten by bugs. Kate Blanchett is climbing trees.
Yep.
And Marion drives to the edge of the cliff and scopes out the tree. And it's like a 3-second shot. She looks down and she smiles. And then she comes back around and drives back up the path to pick up Indiana and John Hurt.
Are you watching this? Are you being serious?
I'm actually watching. I just watched it. I'm watching him now. I'm watching it.
I have to open this now because I'm
watching it. It's at a minute or an hour. I got to go back a little bit. I'm going to tell you when it is. It's it's after an hour 23.
Yeah, because I'm at an hour 23 right now. They're in the water. No, that's in the water.
That's not
hour 23. Oh no, that's the cliff. Sorry.
All right.
I couldn't tell. Here's where the guy falls into the dead body. 127. All the ants pour into his mouth.
No, it's
okay.
No. Where is it? Okay. 124.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's right up here. It's right in this little section. And so it
because they're driving the boat car.
They cover it. They cover it, and I know that's frustrating because you want that to be a continuity thing.
No, it's not that I want it. It's just so absurd that her decision is to drive off the cliff. Yeah. I don't know.
Okay. The absurdity is her decision to drive off the cliff if it wasn't set up. And it is set up. Okay, here it is at, so it's 1:25:16. And she smiles. She smiles. She's giddy. She's happy. Because she knew. She's the only one who knew. Spielberg did that. He totally did that.
That's just going to piss me off.
I know it is, because you've been carrying this. This is your little torch.
I have.
This is a torch.
Okay, she's driving, trying to get them in the vehicle.
Yep, keep going. It's right there. It's going to happen. Okay. So now we know that. So now the next level of absurdity gets to come into play here.
Oh, you're right.
Is it still a wise decision to think that you can drive off that cliff and land on that tree?
All right.
And it was beautiful, that little spatula move that she had. And the even better was just how hard the tree comes back up and slaps those Russians off the side of the cliff.
Well, that was in McCarthy's program also, is training the trees to spank the Russians.
It's the McCarthy spank.
Yep, that's what they called it.
They should be the Spielberg spank.
Yeah.
That could be a thing. I
felt like that's what I was getting when I was watching that scene.
So good. So good.
And here, okay, yeah.
That's an adventure. So that's I can buy that. It's comic book. I get that.
It's comic book. It's very comic book. And maybe that's why it bothers me. And as I've been rewatching all these films, I think I've forgotten how comic book the second, third, and fourth ones are. The first one doesn't feel it to me.
No, you know why? Because of the opening sequence. That opening sequence is all grit, baby.
Give me something that's comic book in it, though.
That's what I'm saying. It's not. It's not. Well, okay, the boulder. The boulder is comic book.
Well, it's not comic book, though. It's not something. To me, the comic book in the second, third, and fourth is all those goofball moments that. I'm just watching these ants make their ant pile. Ugh. Sorry, I got to stop watching this again. The thing that is comic book is the absurd moments with the humans. Usually where it's like the moments where they drive off the cliff. It's just those over the top moments that are just so completely unrealistic that I just have a really hard time buying into.
Yeah.
And the first one, it really felt grounded a lot more in reality than the second, third, and fourth ones.
Yeah. No, I buy that. I absolutely buy that. And so I guess that's why I come back and think, why is it so easy to be critical of Crystal Skull? And I think that's what I've been thinking the last, as I watch this again. Why is it so easy for us to be so critical when there is nothing going on in Crystal Skull that should be a surprise given the precedent set by Last Crusade and Temple of Doom?
No, you're right.
There are no surprises in here. There's a lot of stuff that's just plain douchey, comic, stupid. But if you give up on the conceit that it's going to be as real as Raiders, or sort of gritty and sunburnt and kind of pained as Raiders, once you let go of that, the last three movies are practically a different series.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it almost feels like that's the trilogy, and Raiders is the different film.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a really interesting and kind of revealing thing to have said. I think that you really hit it there. Maybe the thing that disappoints me is films that have been coming out in the last 4 or 5 years have tended to err more on the side of going back to that sunburnt, raw, gritty style. There's been a lot more of that in films recently. Even comic book movie or like superhero movies, they tend to be more on the gritty side rather than quite so clean cut, like Superman with Christopher Reeve sort of look.
Right, right.
And so maybe that's what it is that, I've kind of grown up as a film viewer, as an audience member, and I kind of appreciate that grittier style now as an adult, and maybe that's just what it is. Maybe as we've grown, we kind of wish that we had, that the movie series had grown with us rather than stayed with the family of films that it was.
Well, I think part of the problem, at least for me, is that the way the movie ages for me is, that every sort of movie I see that's more modern, right? Every film I see that is more sort of modern and gritty, actually ages my interpretation of what these movies were. The original Raiders was, right? I sort of have this veil over it with, every time I see, new kind of grit, I superimpose what Raiders should have been had it been released now.
Yeah.
Or what Raiders would have been had it been released now. And so when I watch it again, it looks different.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like the movie I remember because I'm remembering it through this filter that it wasn't there. I want to know how you feel about the relationship story. Because last time we had the father-son, Last Crusade was all about the father-son.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, so is this movie. It's all about the father-son.
Yeah. It's not a bad idea. I just don't like the characters. And I think that's why I just have a hard time with it. I liked what they were trying to do with Mutt, trying to go with that, what was that? The Wild One. Yeah. Marlon Brando sort of vibe. I don't know. Shia LaBeouf, I have a hard time. It's kind of how I feel about Willie Scott. I have a hard time buying her as a 20s actress. Same thing with Shia LaBeouf. I have a hard time buying him as a 50s, kind of a teen punk. And I feel like
right. Do you have an easier time buying him as a 50s teen punk or as a 2000s foil for robot devastation?
I have an easier time buying him as a 2000s foil for robot devastation.
Huh. I find that interesting.
He fits, for me, as a modern actor.
Yeah, yeah. No,
I have always bought Harrison Ford in all the different periods that whatever year the Indiana Jones films have taken place in, I've always bought him in those years. Marion Ravenwood, I bought her so much, and that could just be the writing for the characters. But Mutt, I bought all of the other teenagers in the film more than I bought him.
Interesting. I didn't, I honestly, I didn't have the problem, with him, buying him in that period. The problem I had with him, was that, my daughter's 9 years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
She sees, I'm watching on my iPad. She comes over and the sound she can't hear because I have headphones on.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, is this Transformers?
Mm.
And I said, well, you kind of have a point. Like, you just look at it, and that I really like. Step back. I actually really like Shia LaBeouf. I like watching him. There's something about his rhythm and patter as an actor that I find really appealing.
Yeah, I enjoy him. I think he has been in some great films, and I think he's lent a lot to those films.
He has. I think that more often than not, he is giving more of himself than he's getting as a challenge as an actor. Like, I feel like they're casting Shia LaBeouf because he's this kind of young, kind of heartthrobby kid. Mm-hmm. And I think it'll be a little while before we actually see, who he's supposed to turn out to be as a character actor. And I look forward to that because I think he's one of those actors to watch. But the guy, I don't think he was, I don't think he was really, tested in this movie.
No, I don't think so.
The gimmicks were too much. The sword fight alone, when he's standing astride the two Jeeps,
Mm-hmm.
he's getting racked by the
smacked,
giant plants. I just had it was hard to watch. I felt bad for him. For him. So, but that doesn't get back to the relationship story, right? I want to get back to the relationship because I think that's just such an interesting transformation. And it's another one of those non-committal moments in this movie that I think could have been really special, which is that, in the last movie, we didn't know until the end that the movie was about this transformation of Indiana Jones and this relationship with his father, right? That's
right.
What the movie was about. And in this movie, there was that same sort of spirit of familial discovery, as he's making this transition, from hero to mentor. But
right.
I just really struggled with the beats in the movie that kept pushing him as the archetypical hero and wouldn't let him actually be the mentor that you felt like he really needed to be.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a lot more jokes about him being professor.
Yeah.
Than maybe there should have been.
It's an interesting point because what they're really missing in this film is that sense where we feel like Indiana does have to teach something to Mutt.
Right.
That's exactly what you're saying is like, it's not there. That moment of, I don't want to say passing the torch because that feels like we're kind of passing the torch of the series, which I don't think,
we are not doing.
Yeah. Let's knock on wood. But that moment where it's like, there's a character connection there and he sees something in Mutt that, maybe is something that Mutt needs to get over. And maybe before he realizes he's his son, it's one of those things where he kind of just acknowledges it there, but doesn't worry about it. And then once he does learn it's his son. And what would be great is if they could have found a way to tie it in as, part of the climactic finale where he had to teach a lesson to his son in order so that they could basically be saved.
Right. And that's
just like what Henry Ford did with Indiana at the end of Last Crusade.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's why I just feel like that was sort of opportunity lost.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. That was a tough one.
And I think a lot of it is just the way that the characters were all written in this film. I like the idea of Marion coming back. I like the idea of this surprise son that Indiana didn't know he had. I like the idea of the friend who, double, maybe triple crosses him. But I just feel like they were all written so poorly, that and the actors didn't have as much to go off of as they should have. They just all don't feel like solid characters to me.
That I think that's right. I think that's right. That's sort of my reflection. Even though I felt like the final kind of picture was I've never had this experience before where a movie has aged so poorly for me incorrectly. You know, like this is a movie that I just really resented over the last 4 years since I saw. Whenever did it come out? It was 4 years ago.
08.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, 3 years ago.
Since it, it hit that, since I saw it, I've really resented it. I've resented that it was made. I felt like it was that sort of like, oh man, why did they ruin my childhood memories?
Yeah.
And I watched it again and I really did not feel that same sort of burning rage.
Yeah.
I liked it much better. There were the pieces of it, the character pieces, I think, that are like, sort of drawn on stretched cellophane. It feels like you don't have to go very far before you puncture the whole thread. It just, everything splits apart. But if you're careful with it as you're watching it, if you take care and sort of coddle it, you can actually enjoy this movie all the way to the end.
Well, I have a hard time watching it still. I definitely understand what you're saying. I just think for me, they just made decisions that they shouldn't have. And I think that if they had spent another 6 months or a year or whatever, just getting the characters written, so they really felt real. I mean, even if they kept the buffoonery going on, if the characters at least felt more real, and I really bought into all of them, I think I would have enjoyed this film a lot more.
We haven't talked about David Kopp yet at all. I sort of can't believe that.
That we haven't talked about him?
We haven't talked about him yet. Yeah. I mean, here's the guy. He's actually written movies that I quite like. He did Spider-Man. I quite liked Spider-Man. Panic Room. Quite liked Panic Room. I thought Panic Room was terrific.
Yeah.
I may have been alone. Angels and Demons. I quite liked Angels and Demons. Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
I love Mission Impossible. The Shadow. Who knows, Andy, what evil lurks? And that was great.
David Koepp knows.
He does. Is it Koepp? Yeah. Have I been butchering it all these years?
Koepp.
I thought it was Kopp.
I don't know.
Koepp. David Koepp. He's got some other ones coming up. Spy versus Spy. I don't know much about that one. Men in Black 3. I'm worried about that a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
I didn't like the first one, so I haven't watched the second one.
Yeah,
and I won't watch the third one.
That's bitter.
I am. Yeah. I'm a grumpy, bitter man.
What's your take on his? Obviously, we agree that there are some pieces of this film that are particularly fragile. How much of those are attributed to the screenplay?
Most.
You think?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where it all comes from, the screenplay, If, obviously there's some improv on set and, when they're doing the fights and Spielberg goes, oh, I have an idea. Let's have him hide in the fridge. And then the nuke will throw him across the state and he'll be okay because he was inside a fridge. I think a lot of that, can happen. But I think for the most part, it's on the page. That's how you figure out what the budget's going to be. It all stems from that. And I think that, I don't know. I mean, David Koepp, whatever it is, he certainly has a lot of science fiction under his belt, a lot of adventure, a lot of exciting films that he's worked on, that he's been a part of, and he knows how to write a script. I think this is the case of a story that has been brewing in the back of George Lucas's head for nearly 20 years. You know, he undoubtedly wanted to get the Monkey King into this one too, if he could have.
Oh.
You know, it's a film that, like you said earlier on, there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen on it. And I think no matter what, David Koepp was going to be up against the wall, dealing with all these different opinions being slung his way.
You know, I think for me, the script issues came to a head at the very end, after as they're all trying to get into the temple, right? John Hurt's character has kind of lost his mind. He's going around. He's trying. He finds a sand coming out of one of the idol heads sticking out of the
right.
And I had this thought that it sort of struck me that, you know, there's just too many people on screen right now. There are too many relationships on screen right now.
Yeah.
And you just lose track of kind of what emotional elements you're supposed to care the most about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in so many respects, I want the screenwriter to make those choices for me before I have to struggle with them in the theater.
Yeah.
I feel like that's their job. Make some of the hard choices for me so I don't have to.
You're right. It totally is their responsibility to do that. Unfortunately, you know, he wasn't the first screenwriter on the project. This story had already been developed by Lucas and then by a number of screenwriters who had come on board to help get it written. You know, Jeffrey Boehm, who I believe wrote Last Crusade, you know, he wrote a couple versions of it. I can't remember who else worked on it. I heard that M. Night Shyamalan did, but I don't think that worked out. Frank Darabont, you know, who was famous for Shawshank Redemption. And actually he worked on a number of the Young Indiana Jones episodes. I mean, he, I think, wrote some of it. And all of these had that, you know, alien story going on. So, you know, I think a lot of that, of what David Koepp brought to it, is pulled from all of those other scripts. Right. So, you know, I don't know. I think that all of the character development, everything really boiled down to him making it come across, and I just don't think he pulled it off.
You know, Frank Darabont was a Walking Dead.
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
Still good. Still good.
Very exciting.
Week. Still good. It's freaking amazing this week.
I need to watch it.
I don't know. I think at some point we might have to just start doing series, and we'll start.
That'll be a hard one. Because then it'll be like, okay, we've got 75 episodes of this show to watch.
Did you see that they released the box set of Law and Order? And I don't mean Law and Order like one series. I mean 456 episodes. 456.
When you've got lots of time on your hands,
pick it up. That's a serious sort of illness that you're recovering from, God willing. That you're going to invest in 456 hours of Law and Order.
That's
or a prison sentence.
That's a lot of time.
Bottom line on this movie, did second time through, or do you hate it more or less than you did the first time?
Oh gosh, you know, the more we talk about it, I think I'm realizing that I probably hate it less than I did, because I was with you when I first saw this. I mean, I walked out of the theater livid at the defecation that I felt Spielberg just dumped on my head.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just what I felt like. It was just so painful to sit there watching that. Now that time's passed, I'm watching it again, and I've read a little bit about it, and I understand why he shot it to look kind of that old style. And, you know, I have a better sense of what they were trying to do with it and everything. I still don't think it worked. I think you're right. They pulled their punches a little bit. They didn't, you know, go all the way. I think the script was weak, particularly where the characters were concerned. But yeah, I mean, maybe I don't like it. Maybe I don't hate it, I should say, as much as I did.
I think for me, you hit it. And I think the bottom line is, I don't feel like we should have to work so hard to like an adventure film.
Yeah.
I feel like we had to work so hard to, learn about it. It wasn't fun to learn about the movie because I'm interested in it. It was, man, I'm glad I did the research because that's the only thing that saved it for me.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have to work so hard in a movie like this.
No, you shouldn't. We should be wanting to go learn about it just because we're fascinated rather than, I have to sludge through this film. I'm going to have to figure out what's going on with it.
Well, and maybe it's because I watch, I'm watching some other kind of kid films, but I'm at the end of this movie, they all fall when the sand is coming out of the pillar at the temple, right? And the floor falls out from under them and they're about to land on the stairs that are receding into the wall. And there's this overhead shot where you see all 5 of the characters, right? Mm-hmm. And they're all in a line, like a chorus line. And it's like their left hand is on the wall of the central pillar.
Yeah.
And the floor falls out and they all fall down together in a scream.
Yeah.
And my only thought was, when did I come into Scooby-Doo? Anyway,
that's good.
That was it. Good. It's not bad. This was a good chat. Good talk.
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? What are we gonna do next? Let's figure that out because now we're done. I feel like we've done our pilot season.
We've completed the Indiana Jones.
We never have to do this again.
No. Unless they make another one.
So what's next? What did we decide on? What's next? You had sent an email that I got kind of excited about, but now I forgot what it was.
It was a Charlie Kaufman trilogy.
Yeah.
I thought that might be kind of fun to do. And then the Man with No Name trilogy I thought would be kind of fun to do. We had talked about doing Alien next.
I know. Wow.
We could hold off on that one and wait until Prometheus comes out.
Oh man,
is it Prometheus or Proteus?
Prometheus.
Prometheus, right?
It's Prometheus. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sort of excited about Kaufman.
Yeah.
Because what we're talking about there is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, right?
Yeah. I think we'd start with Being John Malkovich.
Mm-hmm. And then, adaptation.
Yeah, an adaptation. I
think. Then Spotless Mind.
Yeah.
Or Aliens. Which way? Being John Malkovich or Alien? Give it up. What do you think? Toss a coin. Because that's what we're doing next.
It's tricky. Now that I just remembered that Prometheus is coming out next summer, I feel like we should hold off on the Alien anthology until then.
Okay.
And when I say Alien anthology, I'm not adding in the Alien versus Predator films.
That's going to be a separate series.
Oh, goody. I can't wait for that.
Okay, so next week we're kicking off Being John Malkovich.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Let's do it.
All right, you're on.
Excellent.
You are Andy Nelson, the awesomest.
The awesomest.
Yeah.
Like the mentalist.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's going to stick.
You dubbed it. You dubbed it.
Good call.
The awesomest.
Till next week.
Have a good one.
Here at The Next Reel, we've been passionately discussing movies week after week since 2011. That's a lot of movies and a lot of conversation.
Sure is, Pete. And to be honest, it's a lot of work too. But it's work that we love. If you have been enjoying our show, we'd like to remind you that there are ways to support us even if you're not able to become a member just yet. You might have heard us talk about our new watch page where we've listed every movie that we've talked about paired with Amazon or Apple links to rent or buy the movie.
Now we'd like to introduce you to our originals page. Let's take a trip down memory lane, Andy. Do you remember what the first film we discussed on the next reel was that was an adaptation?
Well, let's see. It wasn't obviously our Indiana Jones series because those were all original. Then we did Charlie Kaufman. Oh, of course. It was adaptation from Susan Orlean's Orchid Thief.
Exactly. We have covered quite a few adaptations over the years, and now we're providing a way for our listeners to delve into the original source material.
That's right. Just head over to thenextreel.com/originals, and you can see the list of all the adaptations that we have discussed.
From our David Fincher series, featuring The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Social Network, Zodiac, Benjamin Button, and Fight Club.
To our Paranoia trilogy with The Parallax View and All the President's Men, we have covered a variety of adaptations.
Those were some great discussions, especially Fight Club. And let's not forget our baseball series with The Natural and Field of Dreams, adapted from Shoeless Joe.
And Up in the Air and Thank You for Smoking. So many memorable conversations.
Absolutely. And you know what's exciting? Each purchase you make through our links doesn't cost you any extra, but a percentage goes to support the next reel in our family of shows.
You can support us while diving deeper into these fantastic stories, whether it's the paper, audiobook, or Kindle version.
We've also included plays and movies. If they were the source, we've put it on there.
So what are you waiting for? Head to thenextreel.com/originals, support The Next Reel, and get your next great read today.
I'm off to reread Fight Club. Now, where did I put my Kindle?